Are we on?
We're on.
All right. It is 6 o'clock. If you like gavel, I'll use gavel. Call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Redevelopment Commission. And I would like to start off this evening with a roll call, if we could. Executive Director.
Absolutely. Sharon Bryant.
Here.
Jimmy Dillahunt.
Here.
Sarah Proctor.
Here.
Steve Strickland.
Here.
Julius Parham.
Here.
Tabari Wallace. Leander Morgan. Beth Walker.
Here.
Kip Paraguay.
Here.
And none of our ex officio members are in the house.
Here's steps. Oh, it's Leander. Oh, look.
Leander Morgan.
Double hitter.
He is here.
Tabari Wallace.
Here.
All right.
All right.
You have a quorum, Madam.
We have a quorum. That's excellent. Thank you. Next thing on our agenda, and while you gentlemen are getting situated, we're going to go over our mission and our guiding principles. Can I get somebody to volunteer to read the mission statement? I believe Mr. Strickland read it last time, so. Do you have it in front of you, Sarah? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to volunteer you then.
I said, don't you have it in front of you, Sarah?
The New Bern Redevelopment Commission, leading the way for community transformation and improvement by directly addressing community needs in the vital areas of public health, infrastructure, housing, and economic development. The Commission is committed to an accountable, transparent, and publicly driven process.
All right, thank you. And now we'll also go through our guiding principles. We can just carry that around the room. Yes, go ahead.
Past, present, future, equal time.
We respect others' opinions.
Listen to build consensus.
Share accurate information, public perception.
Stay focused, be action-oriented.
And everybody together?
Believe.
I do
All right.
wonder about those,
Thank you.
I wonder about this statement. I wonder is it accurate or where did it come from? If I may ask that question.
Our statement? Our guiding principle, we developed that when we developed our document in, I believe it was 2019.
Yeah, it was done by the commission in the early years of the formation.
And do you think we're living up to it? That's the question.
Are you talking about number four? Number four?
I'm talking about all of them.
You talk about the whole thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
No, that's a matter of opinion.
I do.
I think so.
That's something I wonder and think about when I read it.
Okay.
Okay. And I think that's why we like to keep it in front of us and read it at every meeting so that we're reminded of what it is we're working on. All right. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is approving the agenda. Did everybody receive their agenda packet? And almost everybody has it in front of you. You working on that? Okay.
I make a motion to consider approving the agenda, please.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as it is. Is there any discussion on that?
No.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and we have an approved agenda. The next thing that needs to be approved are the minutes from May. And I believe they were also in your packet, sent out by Zeb. And I have one thing on the minutes. I noticed that I was listed as A, absent, instead of E, excused. And I think it should be an E, excused, as I had worked with Kip to take that meeting for me, and I was traveling.
I can certainly make that notation and happy to make that amendment.
Okay. Anyone else have,
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second, and to approve the meeting minutes as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? And that motion carries, so we have approved the meeting minutes from May. Item number 6 on our agenda is to consider approving the closed session minutes. And these are from a while back. They are not from May. Aren't they from April? We've looked at them.
Correct. I am pulling up right now the exact ones because I had several conversations about this week, and I got it wrong almost all the time. So, we would be approving our December and January and March closed session meetings.
Okay. And I believe everyone has had a chance to read those and review those, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the closed session minutes for December, January, and March.
We have a motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And I don't believe there's any discussion on those since we've all looked through them. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? And that motion carries. So now we have approved our closed session meeting minutes. The next item on the agenda is public comment. And I do not believe that we have anybody in public. I see our two presenters. So we will move on to our presentations this evening. We have two, and the first one is a presentation by the New Bern Housing Authority. And we have Reginald Barner here with us this evening. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
As indicated by the chairwoman, we appreciate the opportunity to be here and present our ask of you all to enter into an agreement at some point for us to purchase the 3 houses that you all have built on Walt Bellamy. I want to first by saying that since Zeb has been in the current position and I've been as the interim, we have discussed and really formulated a partnership around what the Redevelopment Commission is trying to do. I listened to your mission statement and that of the Housing Authority. We want to work in partnership from our board standpoint and from a community standpoint. And so I just want to go on record to make sure that you all understand from our perspective that we want to be in lockstep with you all as you all take on different initiatives in the community and how the Housing Authority can be an integral part of working with the Redevelopment Commission from that standpoint. Secondly, more importantly, the reason I'm here is if you all would approve us to be able to enter into an agreement with you all, I also plan to take to my board on Monday night the request to purchase the 3 houses. We've been in communication with FEMA. As you all know, when the flood occurred at Trent Court, FEMA has preliminary committed some funds to the authority. We've been working through that process with them. They have approved about $8 million already for us to do a planning and redevelopment from a master plan redevelopment standpoint. They approved us a little over $8 million back in December, and we're working on that process. We're also engaged an RFP for a CNI consultant to allow the Housing Authority to work in collaboration with the community. We plan to go after a Choice Neighborhood Initiative implementation grant. If you all remember, as a community, you all received a Choice Neighborhood planning grant some years back, and so our goal now is to move forward with an implementation grant, and we're going to use part of that $8 million that we received from FEMA to pay the cost of the consultants, the planning, the engineers, the architect, to put a master plan together to really focus on the 5-point plan that was presented back in 2015, 2016. And so our goal is to use some of those funds long term to reimburse ourselves for the purchase of these 3 houses. In communication with Zeb, we understand that you all would be willing to entertain an offer from us at $164,000 per house. We're willing to accept that. We understand that your appraisal right now came in at $162,000 per house, but we're willing to enter into an agreement at the $164,000 per house. Our goal is to begin to utilize the transition and the replacement of some of those units lost at Trent Court when the flood occurred with Florence, to begin to utilize at least these three to jumpstart that effort to be able to utilize that. But I'm also a home ownership person, and so I'm big on home ownership. So I'm not as interested in redeveloping apartment complexes for what I call low wealth people. Some people say low income, but I call low wealth. And so my long-term goal is with these three houses, is while we may buy them initially as rental houses, the intent long-term would be at some point to be able to help create home ownership for those low wealth families in our community. We know that in America, the number one wealth building tool in America is home ownership, and we can utilize our programs to be able to do that and our resources to be able to do that. And so as we go forward with you all and others in the community in redeveloping what was lost at Trent Court, our goal and hope is to facilitate some of that with single-family homes opposed to just apartment complexes, because that long-term doesn't give those families an opportunity for the American dream. So that's one of our focuses as well, if you all approve us to be able to move forward. From a timing standpoint, from our perspective, if you all approve, we understand that if you approve it, that it has to go to the alderman for final approval. We understand that. I want to work hand in hand with our attorney and your attorney to be able to draft those appropriate documents. I plan to get approval from my board on Monday night after this presentation, get approval from our board. FEMA has signed off that they will, when funds come in, which may be 2 years down the road on the redevelopment side, they will reimburse us for what we use to purchase these houses. It is an eligible use, so we're willing to take the risk to be able to go ahead and acquire these three houses at this point, knowing that at some point FEMA will provide us reimbursement for that. We're comfortable with that, and we understand the process that we have to undertake. So with that, we will be working with the local lender to be able to help facilitate the initial acquisition of that, of the purchase of those homes with a finance mechanism that is acceptable to our board to be able to do that. So with that being said, my goal is hopefully we can be able to close this project out in the acquisition by the end of August, no later than the end of August. That would be our time frame. If it can be facilitated sooner, then we would be working to do that, but at least to give ourselves a little bit of comfort and timing, then our goal would be to be able to facilitate it by the end of August. Again, the whole intent is to continue to work with you all. So our goal is, as we purchase these houses from you all, hopefully you will use resources to identify other opportunities to build more single-family houses. There are a lot of infill lots in this community that need to be redeveloped, and we want to be a strategic partner with you all to help facilitate that. We need to move families out of Trent Court in order to be able to redevelop and do our demolition long term. And so while it's only three houses, we got to start somewhere. And so that's our goal, to work with you all as you go forward with your projects, that we can do that again in collaboration. That's the end of my presentation, and if there are any questions of me, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you so much for that presentation. You covered a lot of ground, but I will open it up for questions from our board.
I do have a question, please. Does the New Bern Housing Authority currently own any single-family dwellings?
We don't. So traditionally, this community has not focused on the single-family aspect, and so I think this would be our first opportunity to be able to do that, but hopefully it won't be our last opportunity to do it. And even in the discussions with Zayab, we're looking at old schools, we're looking at infill lots, we're looking at everything in this community, everything that was initially put in that CNI plan. We want to focus on that and revive that. It's a good document, has great bones, and we want to utilize that to begin this process for redevelopment in the community.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions if I can answer them. You answered my first question, and I have two more for you.
Yes, sir.
Are you in partnership with Habitat Humanity?
We're not at this time. So this is our first opportunity based on these three houses to be able to facilitate that. And again, I want to be clear, we are primarily from a rental standpoint, but our long-term goal is to be able to utilize these houses to create homeownership. So we're not doing homeownership right out of the gate like Habitat does, but our long-term intent is to, build, whether it's townhomes, single-family homes, garden-style apartments and those kinds of things are the traditional way. But in most communities, now we're looking at alternatives because, again, the long term is to give people a chance for home ownership.
One more. How much of Trent Court do you plan to demolish?
Our goal long term is first to demolish those units that were flooded, and then secondly, as we can transition families out of there, is to demolish the entire development and do a long-term redevelopment plan.
In that same area?
In the same area. What we want to focus on is a mixed-use, mixed-income development from where we demolish those units. And that is why we're trying to focus on the initial CNI plan for the 5 Points area, because there's a lot of ground to cover and there's a lot of opportunity. And so we want to use CNI funds that we're going to apply for with the FEMA funds and then other funding that can be potentially leveraged to really create a long-term vision for redevelopment for that entire corridor.
Okay. We always use 5 Point as a pony, if you know what a pony is.
Yes, sir.
So are we using that for a pony to demolish Trent Court to build high-rise over there? Or
No, not from my standpoint. So again, I've only been in the community from the interim standpoint since October. I've been the consultant to the Housing Authority for the last year and a half. And so to your question, and more specifically to answer that question, that's not my goal and that's not my intent. However, when you look at Duffy Field and the surrounding areas completely, our goal is to look at those areas strategically and see how we can be a very good partner in helping to bring more quality, affordable housing in those communities. Let me be very clear with you. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Your housing stock is not the best in those communities, and I think the Housing Authority can play an integral part in being able to bring better quality housing for low to moderate income families as a strategic partner.
Yeah, you made my point, but then maybe I can throw this to Zia. I don't want to see condos or whatever on the waterfront priced out of our range.
Correct.
And that's what I can envision seeing.
Well, our goal is to create a mixed income development. Just to be clear with you, what HUD is not interested in and what HUD focuses on is the deconcentration of poverty. And so we've moved away from those days of we warehousing poor people together, all together. The intent is what makes communities vibrant is when we can create a mixed income environment. So our goal, I'll be very honest with you, is to create a collaboration of low to moderate income people at 80 to 100% of AMI and those people at 100 to 140%. The three-tiered approach makes it more for a better living condition than just putting all poor people in a community together. And so our goal is collectively, not just where Trent Court sits, but throughout our whole master plan is to create a mixed income development.
And one more, I think this will do me. Do you plan to only go in the 5 Point area or maybe venture out of that area?
Yeah, so our goal is to look at everywhere within the city. As you all know, prior to me coming, the project on Carolina Avenue was a collaboration that the Housing Authority did to build some apartment units there. So we want to look at the entire city holistically and also Craven County holistically. So no, we're not just looking at that. However, I do want to be very specific. There is a tremendous need within the inner core of the community that we feel compelled to be a strategic partner to help bring back redevelopment, which I look at and I've read your history. Those are vibrant communities that have seen some better days, and so we want to try to help do our part to bring some quality housing back.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Got a couple real fast. Now you mentioned these three being a part of the the inventory replacement, are you be looking to replace the ones that were taken offline with the flood, or will you be taking more units in Trent Court offline as a part of this?
Yeah, we're gonna be taking, long-term, we're gonna be taking everything offline,
But
so.
these three specifically?
Yeah,
Would you
and
take
so-
3 more out of Trent Court now, or using the inventory on paper, the inventory that you lost when the flood?
Yeah, so from a funding standpoint, we're using the replacement funding to bring back 3 that were lost. However, in order to do the demolition of the 108 that's remaining, we got to have somewhere for those families to go. So we can't begin that demolition process until we can relocate those families, and we want to relocate them in quality housing. This begins that process for us. So the opportunity for us is to be able to identify these 3 quality families moving out of Trent Court into these 3 houses, so then we can begin that process of long-term demolition. But we can't do that until we create more housing.
Right. So with it coming out of those 3, then would the pricing that you intend to charge the families still be based on the housing charges that you're looking at in Trent Court?
Absolutely. So one thing I want, and I'm glad that you brought that point up. That was a point that I missed to share. So when Trent Court flooded, the Housing Authority, HUD provided to the Housing Authority 110 vouchers. Because the Housing Authority doesn't manage the voucher program, Twin Rivers Opportunity does. We've been in communication with Cynthia. She and I are working hand to hand on that. We actually have a call with HUD next week. She's leaning on me because she's not done the project-based voucher aspect before. But what we will be doing with these 3 houses will have project-based Section 8 assistance tied to it.
Okay.
So that way, the same rent that the families are paying to live in Trent Court is the same rent they're going to pay to live in these houses, because there will be a project-based voucher attached to everything we do.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good question, Steve. You have,
I have something else. It's more so of a statement than a question. And I guess the hard fact of the matter is that there's been public housing on that property since World War II, and it's prime waterfront property at this point in time. Now, with what Mr. Strickland just asked about the prices, it's going to be apparent that waterfront property is going to be much more valuable than some of that inland property that will sit on the same property, but just not waterfront property. And I guess the concern of the community and the concern of this board should be, and the concern of the city and the community is going to be, are you going to put, not high-rise, but is it going to be that much of a difference in the price and of who's living on the waterfront property versus who's living on the inland properties?
So I'm going to answer your question 2 ways. One, I'm here tonight to talk about the 3 houses. So we're not gotten as far in the planning process related to the redevelopment of that master plan site. So I want to be fair, but I want to be honest with you. That's not what I'm focusing on this evening, but I want to answer your question. So to share with you all, from a FEMA standpoint, from the water to Walt Bellamy, that will be a green space. No units will ever be built back from the water up to Walt Bellamy, okay? Now, from Walt Bellamy back, we can develop, which we've not developed yet. We've not developed that master plan. We don't know what those units are going to look like. We don't know if it's a high-rise. We don't know if it's a mid-rise. You know, we have height restrictions. We got Tryon Palace next door. So there are a lot of different factors. We're in a historic district. So there are a lot of different things that we got to take into account. However, because of the base elevation level, we know that we got to elevate any units that we build back. But let's be very specific. From Walt Bellamy to the water, there will not be any units being built. That will be green space, and our intent is to work with the community, whether it's walking trails, some type of park, et cetera, et cetera. But for any time going forward, we will be prohibited from building any units from Walt Bellamy to the water.
Thank you very much. And my statements were based on, I know how my community thinks.
Yes, sir.
And that would be something that I would advise that they get out in front of to make sure that they know that they have not taken what used to be public housing and now trying to make it waterfront property, but you answered my question perfectly. Thank you, sir.
But I do want to publicly say the intent, while I'm helping the agency, as I answered the gentleman's question, is to create a mixed income development.
Right.
So you're right, we'll get it out in front of it, but we will articulate and to be very candid with you, what was in the planning grant for CNI is what I'm talking about. So there's nothing that I'm talking about now that you all as a community that previously participated in charrettes and other discussions that the community as a whole didn't sign off on. So we're really taking the bones of that CNI plan and now transforming it to our goal from an implementation standpoint.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Tabari.
And being that we're not here to talk about that particular part, I'll just make a statement, and then when it's time to talk about it, you got my number, just let me know, then I can talk about it, okay? All right, but as far as the mixed income, you know, the goal of having mixed income over there, the guarantees, and you don't have to answer right now, but as you work towards it, try to put some firewalls or guarantees to ensure to this community that it will be mixed income and they will not be priced out.
Yeah, and those are guaranteed.
Okay.
We're going to be required, the FEMA money can only be used for the replacement of what was there before. That's why we're going after CNI money and other funding. We can't do this master plan without incorporating all facets of funding sources to make it work. So if all we had to be able to do and utilize is the FEMA fund, then 100% of what we're trying to do back would have to be for low to moderate income families. That's not what we want long term.
Right.
And so we got to create a mixture of other funding sources to make this master plan work.
I have a question. Do you know where Walt Bellamy Drive end at? That's the question I'm asking.
I do, sir. Yes, sir.
So from that point to the curve, Triumph Palace, what's going to be done
Yeah,
with that?
so a portion of it we own, a portion of it we don't own. So a part of that is owned by the city where the pump station used to be and those kind of other things. But where the office is back to our development, all of that would be green space.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, we've had some very good questions.
Yeah.
I can tell there's excitement about your proposal to buy these 3 houses based on the questions that we've gotten for future development and future partnership. Just want to make sure on this side of the room you ladies are quiet. Any questions over there? Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Where do we go from here, Madam Chairman?
Tonight, is it just listening and understanding, or are we in a place to take action on this?
Discussion.
Just discussion.
Just
Okay.
discussion.
And Madam Chair, I might be able to be helpful. So tonight was an opportunity for you all to ask questions to be able to better understand the long-term vision for these units as well as some neighboring redevelopment. I anticipate, as Mr. Warner has indicated, that next month, after his board takes some action, there may be some documents for you all to review and consider. So you may want to give direction to staff to continue to collaborate with Mr. Warner and the Housing Authority to bring this issue back to you during your July meeting for action.
Okay. And I appreciate you going through that because Mr. Barner's bringing it to his board for approval, and then that will come back to us as
Yes,
an
ma'am.
agreement for consideration. Okay.
So it's a direction to Mr. Huff to continue to work with Mr. Warner and the Housing Authority to bring this matter back to you in July? I hear, I see
I see that.
Just one quick question on that. So, Mr. Martin, you're going to take it to your board Monday, and then after we make our decision on it, then the Board of Aldermen is going to have to sign off. So realistically, if we expect to have everything tied up by the end of August, can we wait to vote on it ourselves officially in the middle of July?
If you all want to, you can call a meeting between now and July or the end of July, so long as you have a quorum, to take action if you would like to expedite the timeline
On that one issue.
on that one issue.
Okay.
Well, one of the options in our packet is to empower the chair and the staff to negotiate and execute the agreement as well.
We don't have an agreement before you tonight.
Okay, can we, but we're talking about empowering them to negotiate and create the document.
Yes, and that is and perhaps I wasn't clear. One thing that you can do is give staff direction to continue those conversations to negotiate, and to formulate an agreement for you all to consider at your next meeting, whether it be your regularly scheduled meeting in July or a special meeting.
And I think from Reginald's standpoint, he would probably be very happy to have an endorsement, not an approval of an agreement, but an endorsement from this commission for the sale of the property to the housing authority for their stated purposes. Is that something that?
Well, in giving staff direction to continue the conversation, that indicates your willingness to enter into this type of arrangement. If you all told staff, don't talk to the housing authority anymore, we don't have any appetite, then that would be very illustrative as well.
Okay.
So those are our two options tonight, is to move forward and empower staff to move forward with this, or to say we don't like this idea.
Yes, ma'am.
That's really where we are. Okay.
Can I ask a question to the attorney's point? My intent on Monday night is, based on the price point that I mentioned, is to get approval for our attorney to work with Jamie to draft a PSA around that number. And so, as she indicated, while you may not be taking a formal vote, I mean, I do want to make sure we're going down the right track on this thing, because otherwise I don't want to get the board to approve something.
And the price point that you mentioned was
$164,000 per unit.
Per house, which
Per house.
They all appraised slightly different, but
They
that
appraised
is
at
above
162.
each appraisal. So
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah. And just for the record, in our discussion, we had some discussion when the builder was, because we've had an interest, so we had some discussion with the builder. He made some minor modifications, and so, you know, we're willing to incur that cost in the purchase price, because it wasn't a part of your original plans and specs. And so he made those modifications. It resulted in a higher price, potentially from a sales standpoint. So while it's a couple of $1,000s more than the appraised value, we're comfortable in paying that.
okay. And so, I'm sorry, Sarah?
When we, or assuming we agree to the sale and purchase, we would not be putting any restrictions on it, like low income, any of that stuff we would do, we would just be selling it outright, is that correct?
I believe that, yes, is the case, that we would just be selling it.
Okay,
outright.
And it's important to note, the mechanism that you all would use if you're inclined to go forward would be selling directly to an entity serving a public purpose. So much of the restrictions that you all might be inclined to impose, because they're using FEMA funding, because they're a public housing agency, they are already more regulated than perhaps you would feel comfortable imposing.
Will that be in the documentation that we're going to get in a week?
That they are a public housing agency,
No,
yes.
that kind of things with the restrictions and all that. Some of us aren't aware of all that things, so.
What we will do is we'll make sure that when the agreement is ready, it'll go out in your packet. And if you have any questions as you're going through those documents, Zeb is always available. And if you have any specific legal questions, I'll make myself available to help everyone understand.
And this eliminates the upset bid process.
Correct. The housing authority would not participate in the upset bid process.
And just, this sounds elementary, but so everybody's clear, the money that the housing authority is proposing would come into our coffers for future projects for the redevelopment commission.
That's correct. It is
It
general.
is unencumbered, we are selling these houses, and it is what we would have to move forward with other projects with.
That's correct.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, to cut it short, I'd just like to make a motion, we direct staff to work with the housing authority to begin negotiation and come back with a presentation and a contract that this board needs to review for approval. Is that attorney, but that?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Now I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second, and we've had a lot of discussion. I saw a lot of heads nodding. So if do we need a roll call vote, or can we just do a voice vote for that?
Voice vote is fine.
Voice vote is fine? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
I can just ask one question of Zed,
Yep.
just
Yes, ma'am.
as a part of finalizing things. If you could put something in front of me real fast, because we don't have all the numbers and everything, that shows that the 164 ask does exceed our project price plus the overages. So our project fund plus overages, because I know we had some additional overages that came
Yeah,
out.
the change orders, yeah.
I just want to see something on paper
Absolutely.
indicating that we are coming out whole on this process at a minimum.
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Money Man. Okay, so, if there's no more questions, I'm going to say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? No? Okay, so the motion carries, and we are empowering staff to move forward with this. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Reg.
Thank you.
We have another presentation this evening, and this is from Margaret Shields, who is with Fund Development, Inc., and she is presenting a proposal to enter into a formal agreement with the Redevelopment Commission to provide grant services for funding development projects.
Good evening, everyone. I know several of you on the commission, not all of you, but you may know that I've been writing grants for the city for the last 5 years since Florence, and have helped them secure funding for their resiliency and hazard mitigation plan, and then a number of repair and recovery projects post-Florence, and as well as additional resiliency projects since we moved out of the recovery phase. I guess we're always going to kind of be in recovery phase, but I've worked with several of the engineering firms that the city works with in securing funding, and so in sort of looking at the funds that I've helped bring to the city, it's been between $10 and $12 million over the last 5 years, and so I'm interested in helping the Redevelopment Commission with funding for affordable housing as a priority, and was happy to hear that the Housing Authority is really looking at the C&I plan and the bones of that, because I've used that in a number of the grants that I've done for the city, as well even some of the verbiage I used with the RCSB campaign, and Habitat for Humanity is one of my clients as well. So a lot of collaborative efforts on the part of Fund Development here in the New Bern community in Craven County. And so I think in your packet you have my independent contractor agreement there that I don't know if you have questions about that. It's very similar to the agreement that I have with the city of New Bern. Sort of the same pricing and monthly or quarterly statements, invoices. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that you might have. Beth and Zeb and I met a month or so ago and talked about some different grants that I think would be applicable to some of the affordable housing initiatives that the Redevelopment Commission has. And so I can talk about several of those if you want to hear about those now, or I can come back at another time. So there's some that are due, grant applications that are due in the next quarter that might be of interest. So I can provide details about those or whatever you all are interested in this evening.
Okay, thank you, Margaret, for coming and talking to us. And we did enjoy talking to you earlier. Thought it was a good idea for the commission to hear what you do. And I think, I just want to be clear before we ask a lot of questions, that this is the same kind of situation as we were talking about with the Housing Authority, that she's bringing this for our consideration. We have an agreement, and the options are to empower the staff to negotiate this agreement and bring it back for final approval, or for the commission to say, we're not interested in this at all. So if that helps to set the stage for questions you might have of Margaret, I'd like to open it up for anyone to ask her questions.
Madam Chairman, I have a question real quick. Ms. Shields, in terms of writing grants, do you wait for us to tell you we saw some grants? Can you approach them, or do you hunt for grants specifically for Redevelopment Commission?
Yes, I have a researcher who does some of the research, some of it I do. Some of the things are on listserv that I'm on, that I receive information on. And then also there are certain grants that if you all are aware and want to bring them to my attention that I might not be aware of. That's sort of how it works with the city. Sometimes there's some things, some particular initiatives that they want to go for. Usually I'm bringing them to them, but.
Okay. Do you set a limit on the grants in terms of amount? Because, I'm looking at, what your cost would be, and I didn't want you to I didn't want us to hunt down a grant for $20,000 and then your percent comes out of that, you're not left with a whole lot. So are we looking at grants at $50,000 and above, or $100,000 above? What were your recommendations?
So some of these that I have on my list are just in the $25,000 to $50,000 range, but then others are in the $1 million range. So it's, or several million. So it's really what you all are interested in and what you feel like can be helpful to your projects. So, some clients don't want to go for smaller grants.
Okay. All right. So if you found a grant, then you bring it to us to see if we're interested, and we say yeah, then you go forward.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Or I bring it to Zeb, and if you want to give him that authority, or however you want to work that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for those questions. I have a question. So we could also, and we should be able to set a limit, like of so many hours of your time that we would want you to search for grants for a specific thing.
Yes, and so in just renegotiating my contract with the city, we talked about it's been like more actually research than it has been writing in the last year or so. We increased the research amount because they'd sort of capped that, and it's flip-flopped, that there's more research right now than writing, and that is sort of because there's just a lot of money out there right now for infrastructure, and not so many engineers available or folks on city staff to manage these large projects. So there was a lot of money that came in the last couple of years, and now these projects it's taking a while to get them done because there's a lack. So it just really depends on the circumstances. So it's how, and there may be more research on the front end right now, but I do have a list of 5 or 6 grants that I'm already aware of, and Zeb may have some others that he's become aware of as well. So.
I have one question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I don't know whether this is improper or not. Could you give us some idea of some grants that you have written and have been successful?
So I, as I said, wrote all of the grants for the the resiliency and hazard mitigation plan. So there were 5 or 6 different grants for that. That ranged from coming from coastal management to Duke Energy Foundation. So there were a number of private foundations that I went to for that funding. Golden Leaf, over $1 million in 3 different grants or 4 from Golden Leaf for the city. I think it's 1.5 million maybe from Golden Leaf. The Resilient Coastal Communities Fund for the Rose Street Basin upsizing of that, and that was $247,000, and the new Rose Street pump. So that whole project, the pump came from Golden Leaf, the basin upsizing came from the Resilient Coastal Communities Fund. So that was about $500,000. So those are just a few of the grants that I've gotten for the city.
And my final question, have you done any developments?
Any developments?
Per se for low income or moderate income?
Well, so a lot of these grants, even though they're infrastructure, are focused on the Duffyfield community, Greater 5 Points. The city received a BRIC grant, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, and that is for the Duffyfield Canal for project scoping. So that will be something that will be sort of geared towards housing along that community. There'll be projects and things. Henderson Park is another project that I am working on right now. So as far as actual housing with Habitat, several grants for them that are geared to housing, for their housing projects.
What is the average success rate?
For a grant writer?
Yeah.
I don't know what the average success rate is. Mine is
Yeah,
about 70%.
I didn't want to get specific with you, but yeah.
Yeah, mine is it's 70%, right around, hovers right around that.
Okay.
So I would say fairly successful.
Mm-hmm. In that world, yes, that's very successful.
Yeah. I did submit an LOI last year for affordable housing grant for the city, but then, as I was telling Beth and Zeb, the city was sort of thinking about that West Street property, but the details of all of that were not worked out, and so we had to just not act on our LOI. It was accepted by the North Carolina Department of Commerce, but we just couldn't follow through with it.
Now, the other question, along with success rate, what about the amount you receive versus what you request?
Usually it's pretty close to the amount that I
That's
request.
requested in the grant?
Yep.
That you've written, okay.
Because usually you work out those details ahead of time. Like I have relationships with the Golden Leaf Foundation. So, I usually have conversations with them beforehand. The Resilient Coastal Communities Fund, those kinds of, since I've been doing this for 5 years, I know a number of those folks in positions with the state.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So do these grants typically, do you have examples of any strings, or do they come with strings attached, like you have to meet X, Y, Z, or is it just generally here's money, use it like you say?
Sometimes, a string is going to be a match requirement, and you'll know that up front. I always make my clients aware of matching funds that are required.
But to get any sort of government money, there's 7 million hurdles and reporting and this and that just become a nightmare for you.
Yeah, there is a lot of reporting, and that is something that I am doing with the city is a lot of these grants that I've written, I am reporting on.
And so is that
So
like
I'm happy to work
ongoing?
with Zeb on the reporting that is needed.
So that's ongoing during the grant and would incur like fees throughout the use of the money, et cetera?
Right.
Okay. And then, sorry, just making notes.
Usually, the reporting is not as arduous as the grant writing, but, you know, sometimes with HUD grants, that can be complex.
And then do we need ideas for like specific projects first? Like, you know, or just, are you just looking generally for a housing grant that we can use to build duplexes or whatever we choose? Or do we need to sort of have identified areas we want to develop XYZ area?
It is better, yes, if you have identified areas and sort of at least a general idea and some cost. Because it's time consuming to, you know, look around for things that may or may not fit your criteria.
That's what I'm wondering. So which comes first, the cart or the horse? Do we need to get you sort of like, we need to identify, here's 5
Projects.
things we would like to engage
Yes.
you to? Okay, so projects are first.
Find a grant that fix it, that matches that. You gotta put all that in there.
The thing that worries me is that your note about the infrastructure grants being available, but not a lot of engineers, people to manage them, like we're not heavily staffed, and then you're saying these reporting requirements, like I want free money, but I know better than to think anything's just free. There's always a whole bunch of strings, so like what are we getting ourselves into? Because I'm the one who led the charge to get us into this CDBG mess that we're in, then we can't offload a house because there's so many strings to offload it. So I just sort of have, you know, heightened awareness of strings because of that.
Right, agreed.
And I would think too, that on the grants, once you see the grant, it's gonna give you requirements and restrictions on what can and can't be done, and what you got to do to get the grants, other than just writing. So you know upfront whether or not you want to pursue it based on all the information they're going to give you. Is how much of a headache you want to do.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And that's what I do is, you know, study all of those NOFOs and make sure that all of that is communicated to Zeb, and then he communicates to you what.
What did you call it? You just
said a NOFO, a notice of funding opportunity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, what's a NOFO?
Yeah.
One quick question.
Yes, sir.
So reading your strip here, you're saying in 60 days you should provide us with something.
Right, from like so you tell me that you want research done of grants that will fit the criteria of a particular project. So I will turn around and have a report for you on the various grants that will work for that particular project.
Within 60 days?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably less than that, honestly, but yes.
It's kind of your cap. And I think, Steve, you have a question?
Yes, so just kind of high level breaking it down right now, by going forward with this, we'd be committing to 5,000, up to 5,000 for the research portion. Then you would come back to us with the individual pieces to go forward with. So is that rate, I see at 85 per hour in here, but I see written out 80. So is the rate 80 or 85?
It's 85.
Okay, all right. And then has legal reviewed this contract that's in our packet or not?
I believe that Mr. Davis assisted with preparing the draft.
Okay, because I see some things that, I mean, there are a lot of references to the city.
That's why this is a draft.
Okay.
So if the direction tonight is to move forward, then we would certainly have it in a form where you all would be able to execute if you're so inclined.
And I would imagine that would set some specifics, just like it is for the city, you know, up to a certain amount, or, you know, there's a certain amount on retainer or for seeking, okay.
We'd be taking that direction from you all, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I just got a comment to make. I have worked with Margaret Shield in writing grants for trying powers and programs and stuff that I had when I was there. So she was very successful in writing the grants that I need, so I just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm looking down on the bottom because you guys had questions last time.
They had so many questions, I'm just. Yes, they did.
I think the key factor is we have a resource in front of us. But what Sarah brought out was that the highest likelihood of success in getting a grant is to have a defined project with associated budgets and costs and so forth to present in the application. I don't think we're there yet on anything like that. I think the resource is there when we get there. But, and then after we have a project defined and established, then we can also set limits on what dollar level we want her to search, because it won't do us any good to go get $15,000 grants. That's not going to get us anywhere. So from that perspective, I think maybe we're just a little bit early in this process until we have something that we can work with.
Well, if we execute an agreement with you, there's no money outlay up front. It's just we start bringing you projects, so it lays the foundation.
Right.
So if we sign an agreement in 1 or 2 months, but don't have a project yet, that just means you're now engaged with us, where we can present you a project and start the clock. Is that right?
Well, I read this agreement to say that we're committing up to $5,000 in funding for her to research potential opportunities.
Is that correct? Or
I mean,
is
you could write it like that. What you don't want to happen is to miss opportunities because you don't have something in place, and then it takes so long to get approval that then you've missed the deadline for something that would have really worked well.
So maybe we just, like, the scope of work should be more clear, that if and when we present you a project and then you help us further develop the project and research grants related to it.
Right.
So it's more of an if and when, instead of you just start researching willy-nilly for housing grants.
Right.
I mean, is that how you work? I guess
Yes,
I want to make sure it's how you work
and
as well.
I will keep my eye peeled for something that I think, but I need you to give me sort of a list of.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to spend my time researching grants that aren't a fit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we should consider, like, what do we call them now? Project groups? What do we call them? The Redevelopment Commission should consider a group to identify potential, because it's not just housing. That's not our only mandate. We have, other mandates. So maybe a group of 3 or 4 can start a project group to have our, mandate in front of us and think about areas of possible, to develop a project
We're looking
around.
for money.
Yes.
But I hear a lot of interest in the commission. I don't hear negative comments. There's concern, there's questions. And are we at a place to give staff the direction to work further with Margaret to maybe iron out some of these details, and certainly commissioners who have time and energy to devote to that could be part of that as well, in terms of looking for some of those? Or are we at a place to wait till we have a project?
I have a suggestion, really. Why not look at the properties that we own, put them in one pile, and see, as far as grants, what could you do with all the property that we have by lumping them together? That may be an idea that we could put together, and how much money, we're not talking about $20,000 or $30,000. We're talking about in hundreds of thousands of dollars. So,
Millions,
we want to sort of running out, crawling and walking. So put all the property together and see what can she do as far as getting a grant, as far as building houses. If it's 50 property, hey, see what you can get a grant for building 50 houses. At least clearing the land and getting it prepared for that.
I hear that.
If it's a venture. And I forgot, how many lots do we have in town that's buildable?
52 available lots currently.
So that's a start right there. And we can put them together and present them to her, compile them, and see can she get a grant for the development of them, making them habitable to build a house on. Anything we can get will be better than 50 lots not doing anything. So
Well, our direction right now is to empower the chair and the staff to negotiate and work on this agreement with Margaret, or to say that we found it unfavorable. So am I hearing more positives that we'd like to move forward with this and do some more research and make this a workable agreement that we can use?
I mean, I would be in favor of that, and maybe
I'm seeing that-
scaling back possibly the research side of it. I mean, from kind of synthesizing what Kip and the other commissioners, as I've said, it would make sense to me to kind of go forward and have her standing by to ready to move forward as we pick a project, but not necessarily compensating her to go out and find projects right now. Or go out and find grants right now. Just, again, focusing on synthesizing what Sarah and Kip had to say.
Can I ask a clarifying question? The $5,000 with the city, because this is the example. You say you've been here for 5 years, so that's about $25,000 in research, and you brought in $12 million.
Yes, and some of that was in combination with providing portions of grant narrative for the engineering firms who were providing the engineering speak for some of those grants that were large $4 million grants. Is that?
I have a question for Sarah, I guess if I can ask you.
Say again?
Excuse me, are you still talking?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's feasible, thinking about the 52 lots that we have, to employ her till she can find grants to develop those lots? I'm asking you that question.
The math.
I'm asking Zeb that question.
Oh, Zeb. Okay, I was about to say the math adds up to me.
No, you wouldn't.
50,000, you get 12 million.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Dillahunt. I would hesitate to answer that question solely because I work at your discretion and I would not want to shape
Is it
your
feasible
idea.
to have her?
All things are possible, sir.
And I do think we're kind of at the same place we were when Reggie was making his presentation. There was a lot of questions about how that development was going to move forward, and the development hasn't even been started yet. So I think that's maybe a very pinpoint specific thing that we're not quite ready with our other components to make that decision.
Well, I think we are ready if we have 52 lots, if Zeb can go to work on them.
And there's a county commissioner who has
No,
a
I'm
very...
talking to Zeb, not you. I'm talking to Zeb.
Oh, no, you still talking?
No,
oh,
I'm
go
talking
ahead.
to Zeb. I'm asking you a question.
Zeb, he's asking you a question.
Do you think we're
I've
ready?
already answered your question, sir. I'm not going to answer your question because it is not my job to answer your question.
Well,
That
who-
is
you
my
know-
answer.
You
Thank
know
you so
about the
much.
lots.
Let's go ahead
You know
with
it's
our,
feasible.
can we go ahead with the point at hand though?
I mean,
Because that will give us the opportunity to explore that.
We'll put it
If
on
we're
the
gonna
floor,
go
let's get a
with the-
motion for it. Because we just talking and wasting time.
Madam Chair, in the spirit of being helpful, at this juncture, you all have two options.
Yeah.
One is you can give direction to staff and empower the chair to continue conversations with Ms. Shields to explore what a relationship with her might look like, to bring an agreement back for your consideration at your next regular meeting. Option two would be to say, no, thank you, we have no interest. So given those two options, Madam Chair, you might entertain the pleasure of the board.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, my motion would be that we proceed to negotiate a contract with Ms. Shields, and let's Zeb and other staff members begin to negotiate and give us some idea of what it looks like, present it back to this board. With the idea that, like Ms. Shields said, if we've got something that we're working on and we don't have her in place, we might lose it.
Mm-hmm.
We might lose the opportunity to get some money. But I think staff should go ahead and proceed get an idea of what a contract with Ms. Shields, with the redevelopment commission will look like, and if we can accommodate her, and whether or not we want to afford to do that.
I second that.
So there's a motion to move forward with this agreement in a second.
Well, it was to empower the chair to further negotiate, not
Correct.
necessarily.
Right,
this
not
agreement.
move forward with it. Thank you for that clarification. Not move forward with the example agreement that we
Right.
have,
Correct.
but to move forward to create an agreement for consideration for the redevelopment
So
commission.
Agreed.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you coming tonight to help us understand what the work is that you do, because grant writing is always sounds like a nebulous thing. It does. So I appreciate your efforts.
Sure.
So, we didn't vote on that, did we?
No, ma'am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. So we will move forward with that, and we will probably be back to answer questions again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is much more concrete. May not be less confusing, but it is more concrete. We have 2 surveys for the West A Street project. And we had one survey from Avalos Engineering. They're both in your packet. And that survey, that proposal was in the amount of $16,900. And it pretty much checked all the boxes of what we were asking for in our RFP. We also received a proposal from ECLS Global, and they are a firm based in Coates, North Carolina. And their first, they sent us a proposal in the amount of $8,480. So both Zeb and I reached out independently to understand to help understand if they had the same components in their survey. And they came back with a proposal of $11,575, which I think, and Zeb, you correct me if wrong, does check all the boxes of our RFP.
Correct.
With the same components now.
Yep. So the 11,000 and the 16,000 are essentially apples to apples, and all of you got that in your email, in your inbox to review.
And you can see that the language changed in the second proposal from ECLS because they were being more clear with what they were providing, and it looks more like the other proposal. So what we are looking at now are discussing to see if we are in favor of moving forward with this surveying of these properties as preparation for projects, or if we're going to decline them both.
I think we are, and based on the lowest price for the same flavor, why not? But one question, we had saying divide the lots up in 25-foot increments, and we're trying to get 6 lots. So that's what we were talking about, get 6 lots out of that property at 25-foot. Well, how?
No, it wasn't at 25 foot. They were at somewhere between 35 and 40 foot.
Okay, I read 25 foot in there.
And the proposal said they'll create a final subdivision plat up to 6 lots. So that's in the range that we had always talked about for that piece of property being subdivided. So it complies with what have always talked about, and we talked about it on the site that day.
So if you need a motion, which one we should choose, you got it, $11,000. I make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion
I'll second it.
to accept the $11,575 from ECLS Global, and I have a second. And now, if there's any other questions, did you have a question, Steve? Because you look like you were, okay. Any questions down there?
And they are out of Jacksonville, right?
I'm sorry?
They are out of Jacksonville, North Carolina?
They're out of Coates, North Carolina.
Of where?
Coates.
Coates.
Okay. Where?
I don't know where that is either. I wish I could.
Okay.
And they are a larger firm. They have staff of 50, and they also have an office in Myrtle Beach and in Coates.
And I think they also did the survey work and staked the houses out on the Walt Bellamy project for the builder of their IMAC. They do his surveying also.
Yep.
So they're familiar with this area, and what we do, and the rules and regulations associated with what we do.
Thank you for bringing that up. They did survey the lots on Walt Bellamy. Okay. Any other questions for our motion and our second? All in favor of accepting the ECLS survey proposal, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? So the motion carries, and we are enabling Zeb to move forward with that, hiring them to survey the property. I believe their survey said the proposal said they could begin work on the project within 3 days of receiving notice to proceed. So that should happen fairly quickly. That's a good thing. Okay.
Solve a lot of mysteries.
It will.
They said they could work on weekends if necessary, so it would expedite things.
It would. I'd rather than work on weekdays. It's less expensive. I think their price goes up if they're working on the weekend.
Yeah, it does, significantly.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is new business. And I believe we'll start our new business with, if anybody has anything they want to bring up, we'll start with Zeb's report, then that might bring up new business.
I don't know whether it's new business or not, but you did mention the last meeting in the last minutes about the mobile homes. You didn't bring it up at the last meeting, but it was on the agenda. You don't remember that?
No, sir.
The
What?
Board of Aldermen asked you, would we approve bringing or putting mobile homes in New Bern again?
No, sir. I might be able to help add some clarity, Mr. Dillahunt. I think Mr. Huff did an informal poll of the commissioners. Way back at the beginning of this process, the Redevelopment Commission adopted a redevelopment plan and recommended a policy change to the Board of Aldermen that would create an overlay district to prohibit manufactured homes in the redevelopment area boundary. There has been some question from citizens about, replacing mobile homes and those types of things. Upon hearing that information, Mr. Huff reached out to you all to gauge whether you had any appetite to revisit that policy recommendation. It's my understanding, and Mr. Huff can correct me, that there was not a majority of you all who had an appetite to revisit that policy recommendation. Therefore, it did not make it to the agenda for formal debate or consideration because there was a lack of willingness.
I don't remember it being brought up, but so be it.
Okay.
Thank you for that, and you are spot on. All right.
Okay.
Did you have new business?
We're waiting on his report.
Can we still bring up new business after his report?
Yes, well, we can bring up new business right now.
Okay.
Nobody seemed,
All right, well,
Okay.
I gotta get this done. It's supposed to be done two meetings ago. During my soliloquy to the Board of Aldermen, I said some things and used some choice words based on what I was told when I first took this post and when I first took over the Health and Wellness Committee. Some things I were not made aware of, and my predecessors on the Health and Wellness, what I was told and some of the things that I saw was misconstrued because I didn't have the historical foundation until I talked to those two, Maria Cho and John. I had an in-depth meeting with them about 2 months ago. And I was apprised of a lot of the thoughtful and passionate work that they did do during the time they were over the Health and Wellness Committee. And being that I made those statements in public, I am going to address and apologize for some of those statements that I made in public, okay? And I just wanted to make sure I use this time as new business to get it on the record, that I was misinformed, so I was wrong. And I'm trying to correct that wrong now. They did a great job. They did, and they worked with what they could work with. And I definitely misunderstood the exit that took place. And I think I said something about that. So I stand corrected. And I just wanted to make sure I got that correct.
All right. Thank you for putting that on the record. And we'll go, any other new business? Had to? Okay, now Zeb, I'll ask you to do your staff report.
Absolutely. I'll be brief, as you all have reviewed many things tonight, and I appreciate the hard work that has gone into the past month. As has been stated, I've been working with several developers to discuss the work of the Redevelopment Commission, and definitely looking at ways to attract development to our non-contiguous parcels. Previously, the board, the commission gave me direction to research how we might go about doing that, and so I'm still in the process of doing that, and I'll make sure that as solid ideas form, I make you guys aware of that. But I did want to let you know that that's still in the process. I've continued to meet with citizens interested in home ownership. A lot of that conversation has been sparked by the Walt Bellamy development. Individuals who are interested, who've been lifetime renters and interested in home ownership, have come out, and we've had a chance to talk about financial literacy and lenders and getting the North Carolina housing resources into their hands. And so that's been a great opportunity that the Walt Bellamy development has opened up for us, on top of adding positive stock of affordable housing to the market. I also continued to work with potential purchasers. I have to thank my colleague, Madam Attorney Jamie, for all of her help. The legalese is hard to jump over, but she's been an amazing asset, and everyone who's been involved with that. I'm happy to report tonight that the special warranty deed has been totally conveyed for the 3rd Avenue parcel from the RDC to Carolina East, and so they now own it, and their clock to start construction, as indicated in the agreement, has begun, and so we anticipate construction to begin for the Health and Wellness Clinic fairly soon. My work with the neighborhood groups to stay informed and stay engaged in that project also continues. This month, we also, Commissioner Sarah Proctor and I teamed up and had a phone call with CDBG to kind of get caught up on that whole process and explore some options, and I believe the discussion was fruitful. It recapped the journey that this project has taken to date, and the consultant gave us some things to think about. So at this point, I'm going to actually ask Commissioner Proctor to share her thoughts with the Commission so that you have that bit of insight.
Sure. It was Carl, who is the consultant, and Deja, and Zeb, and I, and Deja is the city CDBG guru. So we just basically went through the history where we had the money was designated for rental, because that's back when we thought we could rent property. So we intended to rent out the property, and the CDBG funds were going to be forgiven under rental. So we had to switch, the city had to go switch the use when we determined we could rent property. So they had to switch the use of the CDBG dollars, and so that was a whole process that took months and months and months, and so that's done. And so now it's for home ownership. That's the permitted type of activity under the grant. And basically, we talked through, okay, what's next? The best ideas we have, so it didn't work with Habitat because they actually place a mortgage on the property and have the homeowner pay them back. That's how Habitat redeploys its funds to do what it does. So it doesn't work for Habitat because the CDBG has a lien on the property. So we talked through some nonprofit options. Zeb reached out to one. I don't think they've ever responded, but there's one in New Bern that we've identified. I reached out to a colleague in Raleigh who does nonprofit legal work, and he reached out to some of his contacts. So far, none of them are interested in coming this far east, but he's definitely keeping his eye out for us. And then we talked about are there churches? Because basically what we need is an entity that's willing to take the property, we donate it to them, and they convey it to a low-income the low-income party that meets CDBG requirements. So they may have some costs incurred with following the rules and recording and this and that, but those costs could be reimbursed. So, and then whatever in the sale proceeds. So they'd sell it to someone low income, get their cost reimbursed, and then the funds we get go right back to the city to refresh the CDBG funds. So we were just, Zeb and I were sort of brainstorming churches, nonprofits. So if anybody here knows anybody who might be willing to take that on, it's definitely we'll need some education and discussions back and forth. But in my view, if they're a true nonprofit, it would just take a little work on their part, but they would get all their expenses reimbursed for doing that. And then the other option is the Housing Authority, and there are ongoing discussions. The Housing Authority has a lot going on, so those discussions are going along slowly, but hopefully surely. So we're still just trying to figure out the best way to offload that property. It's unfortunate that it's been this long, but we are. So if anybody has ideas on churches or nonprofits, please, that we haven't talked to. Obviously, we've talked to Habitat. You mentioned a couple others a few meetings ago that you talked to and did not come to fruition. So if there are any new thoughts on nonprofits or churches or anything like that, we would appreciate it.
Thank you. The last part of my staff report tonight is just the monthly financial update. You all will note that our general fund balance is $351,663.37. And you also note on this report that our ARPA funds have for the McCotter, the Health and Wellness Clinic, have been transferred to Carolina East and are therefore closed at this time. With that stated, I believe those are the highlights, and I'm happy to take any questions you have on the things that I mentioned in my report.
All right. Thank you for that report. So the next item on our agenda is the closed session, and I believe we have a request for that.
Yes, ma'am. So North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A5 to discuss the material terms of real estate acquisition.
So we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Huff, would you put us in closed session? Can we stay in this room? Yes. Okay.
First Avenue.
We are back
I
on,
just asked a question.
He doesn't have anybody.
He was
The
looking
mic?
for somebody.
So we're back on track.
we are back in our regular session. Do I have a motion to
Can,
adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn in a second.
Second,
All in
third.
favor? No, all in favor? Aye. Not trying to persuade anybody. All opposed? Okay, motion carries and we're adjourned.
Yeah, that's great.